Hi, my name is Jim and I was retired. When I began this journey almost 6 years ago, I had to plug in an inflation number into my financial plans, and I chose 2. The Fed had just set an inflation target of 2 and hadn't yet reached it, so 2 was plenty, right? Okay, maybe 3% inflation, but it could never go higher than that, right? Well, stay tuned to this video and we're going to talk about the cold, hard truths on inflation. Do you remember your first home mortgage? In 1989, mine was 10.5%. Take a look at this chart of mortgage rates from Freddie Mac that shows how high they once were and where they are today. By the way, I'm not an economist and I'm not a financial planner. So just take these as entertaining ideas from one educated consumer to another. Do your own due diligence and seek out a professional if you need to. Now, let's get back to my little personal tale of inflation. So let me show you a few charts here from FRED, the great database managed by the St. Louis Fed. Here is the CPI inflation rate over time. Now, there are 2 measures of inflation, CPI and PCE. The Fed uses PCE. Most of us know CPI. I'm going to use CPI. So here is the CPI inflation over time. And as you can see, it zigzagged to a peak of 14.5% in March of 1980. And that's when Paul Volcker stepped in and raised borrowing costs. On this next chart, you can see the effective Fed funds rate. Now, the Fed funds rate is the rate banks charge each other to borrow overnight. It's the lowest rate anybody anywhere gets. And it sets what all other rates are going to be. And as you can see, Paul Volcker raised the borrowing cost up to 22%. It caused a recession. I remember that recession. If you can see the CPI chart again, though, it had its effect. Inflation came down, and through subsequent years, it stayed low until just recently. Now, in this chart, you can actually see that the University of Michigan's inflation expectations of consumers has actually remained quite well anchored at a reasonable level. Now, consumers are not great at actually measuring inflation. When inflation was in the teens, consumer expectations was about 10.5%. And now that inflation is running at 7.5%, inflation expectations are just over 5%. But the important thing is the trend here. If you can look at the overall level, expectations remained well anchored through the dot-com recession. It peaked a little bit at the beginning of the Great Recession in 2008, but it regained its normal range until these recent months. Since the financial crisis and the Great Recession, money supply has actually soared, but we never saw inflation rear its ugly head. The beast was dead, right? I think it was just hiding, as we're now just discovering. Inflation was such a distant memory that people forgot how it works. Politicians started inventing all sorts of reasons why this inflation was transitory. Speaker Pelosi told ABC News, well, just let me talk about inflation then, because people are saying, well, spending is causing. In fact, that people have jobs always contributes to increase in inflation, and it's a good thing. President Biden told NBC News, well, let's look at the reasons for inflation. The reason for inflation is the supply chains were cut off, meaning that products, for example, automobiles, and the lack of computer chips to be able to build those automobiles so that they could function. Well, so supply chains were the problem. The Chicago Fed just issued a study that said job-hopping employees were the cause of inflation. And of course, you have some wackos out there that believe inflation is nothing more than greedy meat packers and oil companies. So All of these politicians and even the Fed seems to have forgotten what the great Milton Friedman said in 1970. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon, in the sense that it is and can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. And so it's not workers hopping jobs, it's not corporations that are too greedy, it's not fiscal spending, unless, of course, the fiscal spending is with the aid of monetary policy printing lots of free money. As I said, I am not an economist. I can't even play one on TV. But to me, Milton Friedman said that easy monetary policy leads to inflation, and only tighter monetary policy can fix it. But there are some more cold, hard truths about inflation that we have to keep in mind. And thinking about what Milton Friedman said, that it's a monetary phenomenon, I worry about the zero-bound policy and quantitative easing, which is nothing more than the Fed buying things to put more money into the marketplace. All of that quantitative easing and low interest rates are going to lead to some years of inflation ahead. Milton Friedman had a few other notable lessons that we may have forgotten. And one of them is one of his most famous observations about economics. In 1960, he said that monetary policy operates with a long and variable lag. His research, updated again in the 1970s, said that adjustments to monetary policy would not see the results in prices for up to 2 years. Now, again, I'm no economist, but that means that we should not expect any quick fixes to the inflation that we're currently seeing. If the Fed takes action this year, we're not going to see real results for up to 2 years. But I also wonder about that long and variable lag. Does that apply to unorthodox monetary policy like a zero-bound rate and quantitative easing? Has anybody measured how variable and how long those lags are? Could it be that what we're experiencing now is the long and variable lag effect of very easy monetary policy for quite some time? Now take a look at this next Fred chart on the Fed's balance sheet, and you can see the problem I see. When the Great Recession began in 2008, the balance sheet was about $800 billion. A lot of money back then. It's 8.5 trillion as we speak today. And it contains a lot of long-term mortgage-backed securities, not the treasury bills that it used to hold way back when. So I'm really worried that this could take years to unravel. I hope not. I hope the Fed has some quick actions to stop buying bonds, raise the rates, and get us back on an even keel. Finally, I'll recall one other famous quote from Milton Friedman that I think we need to keep in mind. We are in danger of assigning to monetary policy a larger role that it can perform, in danger of asking it to accomplish tasks that it cannot achieve, and as a result, in danger of preventing it from making the contribution that it is capable of making. So when some folks are asking the Fed to be more woke and more green, maybe they should just recall some of the wisdom of Milton Friedman and stick to fighting inflation. That's my rant on inflation for this week. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell notification so you'll find out when I post next. Thanks.